Hello, and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by award-winning director Brian Redondo and Savon Jones, aka Captain Vonnie. This is episode 129, and we discuss Gen V, possibly the best show no one is talking about. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible!
Hello, gentlemen. Welcome back. It's good to see you guys. Savon, the beardless one. Brian here got, it looks like a little haircut. I don't know. I can't tell. Can't tell if it's a little shorter.
Maybe a little.
You can't tie it up anymore, it looks like right now.
I just let it all out now.
Both of you are back. Both of you did a little bit of traveling last weekend. Savon, how was your trip to New Orleans?
It was nice. I was ripping and running all day. Every day, every moment of my day was accounted for. Got to see our boy Big Mike get married.
What?
Shout out to Mike.
Oh my goodness!
Shout out to Mike and Anna.
Congratulations!
Yeah, that was an absolute banger. Like I told Mike, boy, you set the.
He's still talking about this wedding.
No,
it must have been so
good.
It
was a week ago. Like it's not that long. How long do I get to talk about it?
No, you get to talk about it as long as you want. I'm just saying, like, it must have been good because, like, unprompted, I feel like you've brought up how much fun it was a couple of times.
It was a banger. The music was banging.
So great job planning, Mike and Anna.
The drinks banging. Everything banging. I loved it.
Did they have custom cocktails made, just for them, or just
no?
The drinks
but they had
good?
little koozies that said Mike and Anna with a picture of Olive the dog on it, and that was elite.
Nice. For people that don't know, the koozie is that foam, holder where you put your beer can or your beer bottle in. In New Orleans, a lot of people have them, and then or they'll get them customized as
like koozies are not
oh my
just a
god!
New Orleans
I can't
thing,
touch
though.
a cold can of beer.
No, it keeps
How
your
dare
it
it touch my
can
skin?
cooler.
Hey, you godless heathen, Brian! You shut your mouth.
I would never touch my drink.
And Brian, you went frolicking in, where was it, the Hamptons or something?
I was also with Anna.
Yeah,
on a
you were with
romantic
Anna.
getaway. We were in
Different
Hudson
Anna,
Valley.
I hope.
We were in
Oh,
Hudson
Hudson Valley,
Valley
not Hamptons.
celebrating our anniversary. So
Hey, congratulations! How many years? 5.
Anna's in our lives like the same time of year, apparently.
Wait, when is your
5 years.
anniversary?
5 years.
Is it the
Nice.
13th?
Congratulations, bro.
12th. The 12th.
Okay, so this past Thursday. Nice.
And the statute of limitation on sending us anniversary presents still open. FYI.
You get lots of thoughts
And you
and
got-
prayers.
and you got it.
Thoughts and prayers.
You got a mega birthday coming up in a couple of days, Brian. I don't know if I can out you like this, but your birthday is coming up pretty soon. So happy
40-40
birthday.
Club.
Hey, he's gonna be 40.
Ooh, Look at you,
All right.
big dog.
I don't know
You're-
if I'm
you're
happy about
the true,
that. I guess I'm happy
the
about
true
that.
sage of confidently wrong. Y'all, honestly, you both are becoming the two Asian dads I never had, and I'm really gonna start.
You're welcome.
I'm really gonna start tapping on y'all for life wisdom of how I can get like y'all.
No, Asian dads just have
Yeah.
a lot of, disappointment and
Basically, I'm going to ignore you for like 30 years.
just
Well,
kidding.
shit, it's already
Gordon,
been
shout
30
out.
years, so we can start fresh, baby. You already been ignoring me for 30 years. We already there. Let's go.
Now change my diaper.
I got you. I'll see you in the home.
Hey, to be honest though, my dad, he wasn't like that. My dad was cool. Very, very low key guy. All right, let's get it started. This episode, we're going to talk about Gen V, a spinoff of The Boys, hitting Amazon Prime a few weeks ago. I think there are now, you guys said 6 episodes that have been released.
Yep.
We're going to talk about kind of the opening because I've only watched the first 3. Although it sounds like you two are so into it, you've kind of caught up to the whole show. Spinoffs can be very hit or miss. You can get, all these Walking Dead spinoffs that nobody watches, but this one here seems to be kind of flying under the radar here.
Can we just say that Walking Dead is like a Walking Dead show?
It's a zombie of a show.
It's
already.
a zombie of a show.
It is a parody
it just
of
keeps
itself.
going.
It is a parody of itself at this point.
It's a shell of a human. Like, why?
Money.
I gave up after season 2. It was too much.
None.
All right,
Hey,
so
who's watching this stuff anyway?
People.
all right, so what was your level of interest in the show coming in, like maybe over the summer or the end of the summer as you started to see things kind of pop up online? Savon, where were you at?
Yeah. Spinoffs can be very hit or miss for me. Sometimes I've had spinoffs that I've loved, others that I've hated. I think
Name one spinoff you've ever loved. Can't do
I'm
it.
a big
Can't do
hold on. I'm a
I
huge
mean, all of Star Wars is a spinoff.
right? A lot of the Star Wars shows are very hit or miss. I'm a Legend of Korra fan. There's legit shows
right.
that like you're gonna quote me right off the top, maybe do it off the top of my head. Point is,
all right. You win. Legend of Korra.
You got it.
That's a
You
winning
got it
answer.
already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Brian.
hold on, my
how
hype
did you
though,
feel?
my hype.
Oh,
The point is,
you're gonna hype it
no,
up?
I'm gonna say how I felt going in. Point is, going in for
Okay.
Gen V, I was not interested. The trailer did not engrave me. It did not get my attention. The idea of the boys' universe with these younger people, and it felt like a very sex-filled teen drama, did not feel appealing to me. It felt like oh, this is gonna be a violent CW show. I went in with
That's what I was thinking.
I went in with a very low opinion, and the trailer did not change my opinion about that significantly.
Yeah, it was like Riverdale, but with violence. Okay, Brian.
I was kind of like Gen V, Gen meh.
All right.
I didn't necessarily think we needed more boys content out. The boys is solid. I think we've talked about it many a times, and we talked about Gen V too in our fall what to expect episode. Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, sure, maybe I'll watch it, maybe I won't.
I didn't have much interest in it, but I think for me it was a little bit different. It was because there's only so much of like the really gory, really violent content, movies, video, TV, whatever that I want to consume. And The Boys just kind of has that in spades. There's just a lot of, disemboweling and killing and dismembering, and that scratches my itch, and I'm good. I don't need to like scratch that itch all the time until, I get a scab and it bleeds. So that's where we were at before. So we get a new setting, a new premise, sort of. I mean, it's similar. Vought, Industries is still the overlord of all of this stuff, but now we're talking about young adults, college age type of kids, a different age group here. They're still being formed. They're still kind of maturing into who they're going to be. They're still learning. They're still figuring out what it means to be a soup in their own image and in kind of this thing. They end up at we're kind of centered around a university here that caters to the needs the needs and education of soups, of people who have been injected with compound V. So after the first couple of episodes, I wanted to give you my impressions, and you guys can kind of riff off of that. So I've been pretty intrigued at it, actually. I think each character that we've been introduced to is really interesting. We haven't really dived deep into any of them yet, but are not to all of them yet. We've dived just under the surface to know, like, okay, there's more here with Andre, there's more here with Jordan going on. Even Kate seems like she has something going on a little bit, the one that can mind control people. So I guess at this point I guess we should say there's some spoilers here coming from the beginning of the show. So if you haven't seen the show and you don't want to, you don't want to be spoiled, then go ahead and go watch it now at this point.
Yep.
But we're not going to spoil too much about like what happens. I think we're just going to talk about like what it feels like, what it is, and things like that. But I think what's key here is that in some ways all of the kids are victims of either their parents or quote unquote like what the system is, or sometimes they're victims of each other, and they kind of victimize other people somewhat as a result of that system that's in play. And so it's a similar interactions to what we saw in The Boys, but just at a high school level. And so it's like more constant, and it's more like, oh, I can understand kind of why they did that. And they're young, and so they're reacting to the situation that they're in and trying to figure out like where they're going with this, what their own morals are, and where they're at. And several times I thought one of the characters was straight up just going to turn into a villain. Like there were moments where she was like kind of losing her cool, and she was treated badly by other people. And I was like, oh, here it is. We're just going to learn that actually she's like lost it, and she's gone off the deep end, like Homelander style. And then she doesn't. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like they kind of flipped that expectation around, like, well, is she or isn't she? And they're going to keep that going for us for a little bit of time. So that part is cool. So I don't know. I mean, the first few episodes, I've really been enjoying that interplay and us getting to learn more about the characters. And they're kind of rolling back or peeling back a few layers of the like the internal mystery of the show that I think is done in a really good way. It doesn't feel like they're manipulating us. It just feels like they're like slowly letting us in behind the curtain, which I think there's a real deftness that you have to do there, so it doesn't turn out to be like, completely like, haha, like we totally turned this around and you had no idea what was happening. It's like, yeah, because you didn't show us any of that. And not answering any questions at all, which is like really frustrating for someone like me.
Boy, just wait until you get to the look. Noah and Brian, knowing this boy only episode 3, I'm like, boo, boy, you in for a hell of a ride.
I mean, someone is climbing out of someone's brain right now. It's crazy.
It's not even the wild part.
All right.
Right now.
All right, Sav. What you
Wasn't
got?
the penis the wild part? Come on.
That
Dude,
was,
honestly,
but that was like expected. I don't know. The tail, that was kind of weird.
Relative. It's all relative. At least for
Yeah.
me. The back half, I'm like, man, I don't care about any of that after what y'all done dropped on me, which I won't spoil, Wes, but
All right.
whew, we got us a show.
All right, Sav. How did you feel after the first few episodes? What are people expecting going in?
I instantly fell in love with it. I had low expectations. The part that I was
He
not
loved
prepared,
it. Oh my god! All right, no fence sitting here.
I watched the first episode with low expectations and thought, okay, and watched it and finished it and thought, oh my god, shit is good, yo. Like this show is legit.
You got me.
I love quality character work, and I'll talk more about this maybe on the next question in terms of, but I think what stood out to me immediately was that I love the entire cast of characters. I think they're all well acted. I think they all have very dope, unique, in most shows with a large cast of characters, it's very easy to have people who you're not interested in, who you don't care about, who you say, oh, every time they're on screen, I lose interest or yada, yada. I have not felt that way with a single character in this show at all, which I'll deep dive in the next question. But the other thing that stood out to me, and you kind of hinted at this, but what stood out to me most is that this show's doing a good job of separating itself from The Boys, and that, yes, it's the same universe, but the foundation of the show is different in that The Boys is about how Supes at this stage in life are these awful, amoral monsters, and how regular people are victims of them. And this show is the exact opposite. This show is about young people with powers who are good people, if not decent, not monsters, who are trying their best. And the real people who are doing the evil victimizing are the humans. And that tonal shift I wasn't quite expecting for Gen V. I think when I went in, I thought it would be more of, oh, here are these students in this university who are all awful and crappy. And not to say that they don't have them, but that's not what the show is about. This show isn't meant to make you hate superpowered humans superpowered people the way The Boys is. This show does the exact opposite in a way that I am very impressed with just the raw execution. And that's without me getting too deep into spoiler stuff. But again, Brian, you can I'll just nod your head in agreement if you feel like I'm off base. But
this man is never off base.
The character work, man.
He's Ricky Henderson.
This guy's stealing bases.
He's Ricky Henderson. He's always on base.
Yeah, man.
I don't even know who that is.
Was that a drug joke?
No, Ricky Henderson is like...
I don't know baseball.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. All right. Tony Gwynn.
I love that your mind went to The Wire. You're like, is that guy from the Towers?
Yeah,
he's moving base?
Right? No, but it's really good.
Savon is absolutely right. In that inversion of what The Boys is like, that this is what Gen V is like. It's very earnest young people trying to navigate superpowers and and actually legitimately wanting to be heroes, but they are at the mercy of humans, non-supes, who are trying to manipulate them through the university. I don't know if that's a big spoiler, but people, if you've watched The Boys, you kind of sort of know what their MO is when it comes to big institutions. But I think for me, for my first impressions of the show, like the first 3 episodes, for me, I think were okay. I think they take a little bit of time, or at least for me, to warm up, especially plot wise. And what makes this different from the boys, right? In that you have these very earnest young people. They're very sincere. They are outwardly emotional. They are nothing like Bill the Butcher, uh, who are the lead character in the boys, right? They're kind of the opposite of that, right? Where the boys is very sardonic, satiric, sarcastic. Gen
Nihilistic.
V tends to be pretty adolescent emotional in some ways. And I think for me that was, it's interesting. As you said, this is very much like a CW show with crazy superpowers and occasional nudity and wild set pieces. And that makes the show both appealing and unappealing, right? I think for me, there are a lot of eye roll kind of moments. The portrayal of young people, some cliche, Gen V, and I don't mean the title Gen V. I mean like actual or Gen Z rather, like kind of like cliche Gen Z jabs, right? Like, oh my god, people are so into their phones and into social media, like trying to be influencers. That whole trope, is it's a little superficial. And so for me, the show doesn't really pick up until after or at the end of episode 3, and where the plot really gets chugging. And I feel that the show suddenly gets more confident about what it is and what it's trying to do with its cast of characters. And so that this kind of leads us into the our next discussion point here about characters. I think for me that's a very important part of the show, and partially why I wasn't super into it at first is because we get this new cast of characters, very new sets of powers, right? So the main character Marie, she is basically a
That's what I was
bloodbender.
thinking.
She jumped out of
And Andre's a
the
metal bender.
Airbender universe, and but at the outset she only knows how to use her own blood, and that means that she cuts herself to release blood, which is like the most
I
like
cringe every time, bro.
spine tingling, like cringing, superpower you could imagine. And like every time she cuts her hand, and then and of course it relates to people in the real world, real teenagers who cut themselves, self-harm and all of that stuff. So it's a little cringy. And then her roommate Emma gets really tiny, Ant-Man tiny, right? But the only way she's able to do that is by forcing herself to throw up, and by throwing up she gets increasingly small. And so it has this whole bulimia thing going on, right? Which is another kind of weird trope to use when talking about teenagers. So it's there's stuff in there that gets a little bit like, oh my god, this is they're going like
Does it feel like
trying
checking
way
a
too
box? Does it
hard
feel
to
like does it
cater.
feel like box checking to you?
Yeah, a little bit. And then you have like the whole other set of teens, like the upperclassmen who are all like sexy and going to fancy parties and being cool and kind of being renegades, but kind of just being like too cool for school. And all that stuff gets a little or makes me want to roll my eyes a little bit.
Okay,
Um until it
yeah, I was about to
until it
say.
all picks up, which I do think the show does. So that's kind of where I was at with things.
Did you think that made it better in hindsight? Because I agree. At first, it felt like I had these very different ideas of these characters that shifted about halfway into the show. But I almost like the bait and switch nature of that. Did you appreciate how they did those characters with that in hindsight, knowing where they were going with it? Do you think that helped set it up for their later arcs in the show to be even better? Or do you think that regardless, in a vacuum or in larger context, some of those moments still were kind of like meh to you?
I think it's a little bit of both in thinking about it. I definitely I'm caught up. I've watched the 6 episodes that are out
Humble
Yeah,
brag.
when we're recording this.
me too.
So you know, I do appreciate that they've really come around, and some characters even more so than others. Emma, the girl that gets small, I think it kind of has one of the best arcs so far, and I'm really rooting for her now. But at the same time, I could still say, like, man, did they really have to take that long to kick things off? But I think, yeah, I do think maybe some of it is necessary to, establish this show as separate from the boys, to give it its own tone. But coming into it, I just would have hoped that we could just jump right off, right? Something that the boys does really well in its first season is just introduce you to the world, and know the tone right off the bat, right? Like it's just going to be completely irreverent, and that's their aim. And so because Gen V is the opposite of that, I think it's kind of stuck. It gets stuck in trying to strike that right balance, right? They also try to nod to the boys a lot and do a lot of big set pieces that make your jaw drop. But because they're working within a parameter where it's not about being cynical, it's not about just like being laughable. They really want these characters to be fully emotional and realized. It's it takes some time getting there for this show, in my opinion.
Sav, any characters stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm first of all, I'll just say off the bat, I really like pretty much the entire cast, especially as the show's gone on. They've gotten developed and they've done a good job of giving everybody really good background stories, values, trauma, them trying to overcome it, characters, trials, tribulations, all of that. Uh, I'm without getting into spoilers too much. Kate, I'm a big fan of. She's definitely one of those roller coaster characters where I couldn't figure out how I felt about her, and I still haven't. But the fact that it's such a hot, cold, up, down type of vibe for me with her is a testament to her character arc in the writing, honestly. Some characters you can very quickly decide how you feel, but someone who can make you almost go back and forth nonstop, almost unlike the way Zuko was, is what can make a good character because you're frustrated with them, you're sympathetic to them, you're rooting for them, you're cheering against them. That is really hard to do without making you just outright hate the character. Uh, I'm a big fan of Andre. His 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 arc is just interesting because he doesn't really have the raw trauma that maybe some of his peers have, but at least in terms of his childhood, but his story of being from this privileged legacy and how legacy can weigh you down and still wanting to be a good person and all of that has really just made him I don't want to say he's necessarily my favorite character, but I'm always engaged watching him on screen because his arc again could go some very interesting directions. I think the biggest thing of all the characters though is it's nice to watch a show that's in the boys universe where I don't hate everybody who's on screen. In the boys, Butcher is not a good person. Like the closest thing to a sympathetic person on the boys is like Huey, and even Huey as the show goes on, he starts to become more like taking on traits of the people in the group. But in this show, all the soup kids are like, even when they make absolute f ups and do awful things, most of the main characters aren't awful people. So it's nice for them to make mistakes and not me just be really cynical about it and me really say, "Hey, no, you're trying to be decent. Don't do this. Don't do this." And yeah,
Look at
for me, so
Savon
really,
rooting for the happy outcome.
I mean, it's not necessarily the happy outcome because there's not you know this is the boy. There's not about to be a happy ending for a bunch of these characters.
No.
But it's nice to just see characters in this really dark, cruel world absolutely push against it. They push against the media training and giving fake answers and the lies and manipulations. Almost every single major character in the show who are like the students push against that in some way, which is the polar opposite of what we see from the grown adults and the boys. So I talked about a few specific characters who I like, but I really do just like them as a group not being monsters and making real, legit, tangible sacrifices that young people, hell, even older people wouldn't make. And that to me is very it retroactively makes the other awful soups in the boys better because it makes you think, damn, what made them go from maybe when they were just young people to what they are now as monsters in the show.
Yeah.
So I've liked that, just how they've characterized all of them as a whole, but I'm a fan of all of them. There's nobody I dislike. You know, Jordan Lee's character I'm a fan of, just the entire, like they're another, I don't like them, but I'm always intrigued by them about what they're going to do next. And again, I think that's a testament to interesting writing because characters have values, have mindsets, but they're not hyper predictable either, which again makes for a really fun show. Again, Brian, I didn't think I expected half these young people, the characters to, especially in the, a lot of them are just way more altruistic than I took them for. And the boys spoiled me on that. And I'm glad that I'm being proven wrong because that was what made me low on the show in the first place. Oh, a bunch of young people with powers being awful. If I just wanted to watch that, I'd watch more of the boys. And that
Yeah.
expectation has been completely subverted.
All right.
Right. They do awful things because they don't have control of their powers, but they're not awful people.
Yeah. Or again, it's the humans who are like the real, all the awful things that happen in this show are almost always the result of like, no, this wasn't really their fault. Like, you know, the show even says, because right, it ties to the continuity of the boys show. I think it takes place the same time as like the most recent season. They're happening damn near at the same time. But at this point, we know that they only have powers because their parents injected them with this drug at birth. So that alone being common knowledge at this point in the show adds a different dynamic to who they are compared to the boys where they just thought that they were these superpowered beings. Like, no, actually, your parents did this to you, and suddenly all of the trauma that they have suddenly is put in a very different light, which again is a theme of the show, right? Being a monster, forgiveness, all of that, forgiving yourself. So I think they just hit that nail on the head very well in applying it to the different characters and how they approach and see the world.
The boys in this show, Gen V, is trying to, or has done some things to like incorporate real world discussions, you know, pop culture stuff, the zeitgeisty stuff, you know, societal questions we're constantly asking, like gender and body image, mental health, all of that stuff. Has some of those things in the show landed for you, and has some of them kind of missed the mark? I think they did a brief thing a little bit with a character who's able to transform between being like appearing as a girl and appearing as a boy, and the difficult relationship that they have with their father, or with their parents, but with their father specifically. And I thought maybe that was like too quick to actually be to be like a genuine, you know, part of the show. That to me did feel a little bit like, okay, like here's this like chewing gum, we're just gonna shove it right here, stick it on, and you know that'll be a way of addressing it. I mean, at the same time, it's like that person is not the main character. Some discussion around that is better than no discussion around that, right? And so I think there's maybe a balance there that the writers were trying to pull off, and the directors. But I wish that maybe would have been something that we could explore more, or maybe we will, I don't know, through the series. But I wish that there was more about that. And they talk about like we get into these discussions from the higher ups in VOT talking about like, oh, there's no way that we could make them like the face of our superhero teams because it just doesn't play right. Like trans people aren't or trans powers or whatever aren't going to play in rural America or in the South or things like that. So I think they do kind of talk about that, but there's kind of a surface level addressing of things like that. I didn't necessarily have a problem with the way they're handling like the cutting and the throwing up, because in some ways it's like, hey, this isn't like a bad thing in this case, right? Like these are their powers. It's not like they have a body image issue that's related to it. You know what I'm saying? Like they're, in order for them to access their powers, this is what they've been, you know, they had to do. Is there another way for Emma to get small besides this? Like we don't, I don't know, maybe there is, but she doesn't know a different way. So if she has to get small to use her powers, then that's what she's, gonna do. I mean, should she just not use her powers? Like, I don't know what that discussion is around, but it doesn't necessarily seem like she's like eating and then purging and eating and purging to stay small, even though her mom does talk about that a little bit. I don't know. Savon, you're
Well, I
making
mean,
faces.
yeah,
Take
because
over.
I think that's one of the things that the show does well is that for some of these characters, their powers and body image issues, all these other issues, go hand in hand because they are one and the same. It's very complicated when talking about Marie, for example. We see moments in the show where she cuts herself out of anger and frustration as a way to actually the way people might traditionally actually self-harm, but she still ties it into using her powers. But I think that's what makes it so tragic and interesting to watch, is because there's no right or wrong answer to this. She's clearly cutting herself as a coping mechanism because of the trauma and who she's been through, but also it is how she accesses her powers, which is tied to her trauma, but also tied to what she wants out of life or what she thinks she wants out of life. It's complicated because one can't exist without the other. Same with the character Emma, right? Like, it's easy to say, oh yeah, she has this, but she doesn't have an eating disorder. But you sound like her in the show where she says, oh yeah, it's not a problem. Like, okay, well, you also mentioned how it's actually damaging your enamel. That's a line she says in the show from the constant purging. So clearly she has a problem. The problem is that her powers and this really unhealthy coping mechanism slash habit are tied to each other, and that's also the key to her livelihood and where she derives all of her value from as a soup. That's what makes it wild when you're a superhero and your power and your body image issues are one and the same. That, like, again, I'm not going to say I have some right answer to that, but that, and I mean, same with Jordan Lee as well. Like, your power, because Jordan Lee in their different forms has different powers. I don't know if you picked up on that, where when they're in their
Sort
masculine
of.
form, they're like indestructible, and when they're in their feminine
Right.
form, they can shoot energy blasts. And again,
Okay. I didn't
some
know
other
what
stuff,
the feminine form was.
I did not catch
I
that.
caught
yeah.
that they had to be in the masculine form to be indestructible. I didn't understand that the female version had different powers.
Shoots force fields.
Okay.
So they do a good, which again, so even with the gender fluidity piece of the Jordan character, that's what I found engaging, is that and I think honestly that's what made it work for me, is that the body image things or stuff that you might traditionally see as issues young teenagers, adolescents face, it's not in a vacuum. It is directly because of the power. So whose fault is that? Is it the parents' fault for giving them the powers? Is it no one's fault? Is it the soup's fault for leaning into their powers? It makes it for a very complicated issue where, talking about, let's go back to the Emma character, where using her power involves some just inherently unhealthy habits,
Yeah.
but it's also enabled by her mother. She also didn't ask for it, but she's also in a funky place because this is why she's in this university. There's a power that's a gift and a curse, and I think she really doesn't like her power. She kind of talks about that. That's like part of her arc, but also that's how she's going to be able, or tries to make a living, right? At first with her YouTube channel, and then later at the dinner, the mom wants to reality show that stuff. But
Yeah.
that makes for very unique character conflicts that most other superhero mediums don't do, in the sense of really leaning into the drawback of what that power is. Normally it's, oh, you eat and shrink. Okay, but what do you do when it ties directly into an eating disorder? It makes for very interesting character work. So I don't know. I guess I was making a face because it's hard for me to try and separate those things, but that's what makes it good. And that's what makes it stick compared to other shows where they maybe just ham fist, oh, here's issues teens go through. All right, we're just going to throw that in there. They throw it in a way that is, in my opinion, very organic. And even if it feels on the nose, it doesn't feel poorly executed, which I think there's a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. Brian.
I think it's kind of a mixed bag, like whether or not it works or doesn't work. I do think they're definitely trying to hit all the buckets. Like, this show is like, here's a list of things that young people are going through. We're gonna hit on them all. Like, we're gonna do like trans stuff. We're gonna do self-harm stuff. We're gonna do body issues stuff. We're gonna do mental health. We're gonna do the social media things. We're gonna do. There's another student at their school who has like raped people, or because he's got like mind wiping powers, or like mind
mind altering abilities, Professor X
mind
type stuff.
altering abilities. Yeah, exactly. And using it to coerce women into having sex. So all of that stuff is happening at this campus, right? And I think I think both of you are absolutely right in that, like, yes, it's interesting for it to be tied to powers, right? And it has that purpose. But I do also think that sometimes, like to Wes's point, like Jordan's talk with his parents or their parents about you know changing between the two versions of themselves, like that conversation just felt underbaked. And so you can tell that the show is really trying to run through all of these topics, and they kind of want to do it meaningfully, but they're also just trying to do everything to maybe appease whatever they think is necessary to appeal to a Gen Z audience. So that leaves certain topics feeling like they've gotten the short stick, and rather they're just being brought up instead of actually being dealt with in the show. And I do think that is also an issue in The Boys.
Yeah, but
well.
no, The Boys is guilty
We're
of
just
that
running
too.
through lots of things. Yeah, and Gen V is no different, I don't think.
Yeah. Right. I mean, The Boys last Boys season had like
now.
A-Train. I was saying The Boys even had A-Train going through a whole touching into his black roots rebrand, but also police brutality, but also revenge, and I'm just hard agreeing with you, Brian. That's probably the biggest flaw of The Boys and this show, is that they have a lot of cool topics they want to address, and they don't have a lot of self-control in saying, hey, we should probably leave this on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, it's kind of like they fed like last year's worth of newspapers into ChatGPT.
Exactly.
Give us some plot points.
Exactly. Oh, this is a thing. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
Well, maybe not on the cutting room floor, but maybe give us more hits along the way, right? It doesn't all have to be done in one episode or in the same 2-minute span. Like everything just starts and ends in 2 minutes.
Everybody beefing with their parents.
We covered that topic.
All right. The NBA
whole
season...
dinner was just everybody beefing with their parents.
Oh, man. Savon is on a huge delay. All right. The NBA season is coming up. It's right around the corner. Lakers, Nuggets, Suns, somebody, Warriors maybe. Knicks are coming. They might be good this year. Knicks might be good. We'll see. Maybe. All right.
Not. Tough. That's
not important. We're not doing an NBA preview here. Which character in Gen V, or which powers, I guess, would be most useful in a basketball game? Like if you could give any of these powers to Julius Randle or RJ Barrett, which of the powers might be useful? Because
those guys need a lot of powers.
Because on the surface, there actually doesn't seem to be much usefulness for any of these powers in a basketball game. But you might surprise me. Where let's not go to the you can use Marie's powers to explode the other teams like Joel Embiid. That's a foul. It's not useful. It's murder.
It's a first-degree foul. First-degree tech unsportsmanlike conduct.
Not a flagrant.
All right. So,
this is one area that Gen V has not covered.
School sports. Let's
Come
see
on,
how this works. Yeah.
How did they miss this?
All right. I'm not sure how to answer this. Maybe I'm going to throw it to you guys. Let's see what you guys.
I know my answer. I know I got an answer.
All right, go ahead, Sav.
There's only one right answer, and it's Kate. Imagine if you're just playing defense and you don't got a hard hand check, but you got one hand on them, shoot it. And it's like the team, and it's just like Julius Randle, which honestly for Julius Randle, you probably don't have to touch him to get him to shoot the ball.
I know, he's just gonna shoot it anyways.
Not at all.
But zang. But do a spin move.
Maybe it'd be better because he'd stop dribbling.
Do a spin move. Say less, fam. No, but But Kate, I would just be a defensive. I would be like a psychic version of Kevin Garnett and Dennis Rodman, where I just touch you and then say
Subtly
the most
move you
intrusive of
over.
thoughts, and then make you just do. And suddenly your basketball IQ drops to Christian Wood levels of just
hey,
he's a lost child. He looks like a lost child out there. So I'm saying, just imagine you on defense. You just all right. You're in decent possession. They posting you up. You got a hand on them. Do a Dirk one-legged fade. Then cue the. Have y'all seen the Patrick Ewing meme where he's fussing at the player in the timeout saying, "What was that shot? You don't shoot that shot. Do you practice that shot? No, you don't. I never seen you shoot that shot. One-legged turn around. You don't practice that shot."
Step back.
And I would just be defensive. Now my offense might not be as good. I feel like getting the offhand might be harder to. I can still hand check some people with the offhand dribble. Hey, switch something. But defense, I would be a terror. Just man, players really seem to lose their nerve when they're checked by Jones. Like, you're damn right.
I think Kate is a tough option though, right? I was thinking that too. But she needs skin to skin contact. She's got to take off the gloves to be able to.
And people might know she's got powers, so they're gonna be like, "Wait, you need to wear your gloves during the game."
Like that's why you gotta be slick.
She has to actually touch somebody's arm, shoulder, hand, face.
You could do that.
Ankle. That I think that would be hard to pull off in an NBA speed game
while you're talking to them.
She'd probably get called
hand
for
checking.
Something.
Then you go up to the ref. Hey ref, that wasn't a foul. Hey ref, that wasn't a foul. You made a decision to review and reverse the play. It is not a foul. Like,
that might happen.
Jones gets away with another one.
That might happen.
We're not going to talk about the negative effects of the power, though, because then, I feel like I'd have a short career. But damn, it'd be a great one.
James Harden style. Just a great 3 years.
Burn out, flash bright, didn't burn. Latrell's, you know, they get those players who are first team once, and you're like, they make first team? Never forget, Latrell Sprewell was a first team All-NBA player.
Yikes.
Let me peek
before he chokes somebody.
D'Angelo Russell, one-time All-Star.
Yeah, man.
What? Really? I had no idea.
He was in Brooklyn.
Yeah. I mean, not to say that one time is amazing. One time is amazing. Like some people never get to be All-Star, but yeah, he. I think he was a little.
Julius Randle has 2 All-Team selections.
Really?
That is physically disgusting.
He's going to do it again. I'm telling you now. You heard it here first.
It actively disgusts me that Julius Randle has multiple All-Star, All-NBA selections because he is awful.
All right, here's my.
You can't argue with that stat line though.
It's true. His numbers are good.
Anyway,
all right. I have one, but it's kind of stupid because someone already has this power. So I would take Jordan's power of the indestructibility, where they just become like an immovable rock. Like you saw them take that punch from Golden Boy, and literally like the ground crumbled. Like that's how sturdy they were, right? But there is a man already in the NBA hailing from New Zealand who sets screens that are damn near indestructible and unable to get around them. Steven Adams, that man, just tough as a freaking tree. You cannot move him. He can pick you up with like one hand.
Strong like
man, just like set you down. Like that man raised on a farm and shows it. So, and I've seen the usefulness of that on a basketball court, both in terms of rebounding and pick setting, in general team enforcement and good-naturedness. So that would be if I had one power to engender to the Lakers, that's the one. I want somebody to set good screens and to do good rebounding down there. And that's how you win games. You got to set good screens and you got to get rebounds. Those are two of the main besides shooting. You got to be able to shoot. That's obviously tough, but we've had a dearth.
There are always those clips of Steven Adams where like some player's angry about to start a fight, and then they turn around and Steven Adams is like, nope, not about that life.
Watch a YouTube video. Watch a YouTube comp of him setting hard screens. And also, I don't know if y'all ever played pickup ball and you actually got hit with a hard screen and no one called out for you.
I get angry.
It is awful. Like one time I got a screen set by an actual like 6'10" dude I was hooping with in college once. He was like, this dude was like just smurfing basically, like not playing seriously. but I had to check him because I was the tallest dude. I'm 6'3", and I was the tallest guy, so I had to check him. I'm in college, so I'm thinner. I'm even thinner. Dude, I legit woke up like the next day like I had been in a fight. I was like, oh my God, did I get jumped yesterday? Because this man set a screen and I ran into him and just the whole man's chest just slapped me. It was awful. No, that's a good one. Brian.
I mean, yeah, like thinking about it, right? Like Golden Boy, he's gonna flame on in the middle of the game. We can't have that. Like Emma's gotta purge to either purge or binge eat to be useful. Like we can't really have
we
that
established
in the game.
if she can grow past her normal height? Do we know?
No,
you just gotta keep watching the show, Wes.
Can she Ant-Man the other way?
She's
watch.
She's very Alice in Wonderland, as they describe in the show. And so I think we're left with the main character, which is Marie. She just got to blow up some dicks. I think.
What?
I think that's a power
thing.
that's gonna be useful here. She's just gonna use her blood bending and like make blood vessels explode in her opponents, and then she's dribbling circles around them. What do you know? They're immobile because their pelvis
you meant
exploded.
She was just gonna like pull the blood into their penis and gorge them, so they were just running around with a bunch of erections in the middle of the game.
You're literally going hard. Literally going hard in paint. No, Brian.
She's like, "Get out of here, James Harden."
Yeah. No, yeah. Try posting up now. No, Brian. But you know what she could actually do that would be less violent, less violent. She could just induce nosebleeds on the other player so that you have to get off the court and just take out your best player. The most
many timeouts.
Yeah, just one of those. Oh man, James is on a heater and he's having a nosebleed. He's gonna go to the bench for a little bit.
Yeah, they have to clean him up.
Like, Brown's out the game now. And now AD's gonna have to also go to the bench. Nosebleed. A lot of the Lakers bleeding noses tonight.
They're left.
What is going on?
They're left with Scottie Pippen Jr. to run the team here.
Christian Wood is going to be really an important big man for their offense this game. Let's see. And he is mysteriously not getting a nosebleed. Don't want to help the Lakers too much.
Your hate.
Oddly enough, he has a boner.
Your Christian Wood hate fuels me. It fuels me when he has his redemption season this season. I don't know. I'm not sold on him yet. All right.
I can fix him. That's y'all.
The wood is on the hardwood.
Anyways, Wes, bring us home.
All right. So I think I get a sense that you guys are really into the show. Are you ready for more of it? Do you want them to carry on for multiple seasons? So far, I'm in it for one season. Like, I'd say I'm going to watch the rest of the season, but I don't need to watch season 2. Like, I think this is good. I think still the same worry I had in the beginning, which was, hey, there's just a lot of violence that happens. Like, I'm okay with like The Boys being my one outlet for crazy, ridiculous, over the top, gory, grotesque violence. Brian, are you in it? Are you like, hey, yeah, I'm sold. Like, I believe in these writers. I'm ready for season 2. I'm ready for the rest of the season to play out. How you feeling?
Well, they've already been renewed for season 2, so it sounds like the show's doing pretty well. But I think I'm with you, Wes. Like, if they can tie up this story arc in one season, I think I'd feel pretty satisfied, and I wouldn't be hungering for more. I wouldn't be like, oh man, we gotta double down on this. But that being said, I do think the plot gets very interesting, and some of the I didn't even mention this before, that because it's like a CW type show in a way, it gets very swingy with the interpersonal melodrama, and so people who were enemies before suddenly become something else later, and maybe people who are a little bit romantic, maybe they change sides.
A lot of smashing.
There's a lot of that going on because it's college and there's incest.
I mean, you laughing, but that's probably the most realistic part of the show. I'm like, oh god, I hate how accurate this is.
I hadn't called that one.
Everybody smashing.
So there's that fun kind of drama, and I think too much of that will get pretty old pretty quick. And so I think if they can wrap up this one plot line in the first season, I would call it a success, and I'd be good. I'd be good to move on. Let's see some other new type superhero
They're
stuff
definitely
out
not going
there.
to wrap it up in season 1. All right, Sav, where are you at on this show?
I'm enjoying it. I want more.
All right.
There's some stuff that's tying in a non-spoiler way, but clearly there's in some ways more strong connections later in the show to the main plot line of the boys, and that will be what kind of determines to me if I want more of this show. If they can make it meaningfully build off, Brian, I think what we saw in the most recent episodes cliffhanger of, okay, so this could really have some ramifications for the boys universe and what's going on. I think more of this show could be really, really awesome. It's just a matter of, do they do it with purpose and direction, which I think they've kind of done with this first season, or do they lose their way and decide we're just going to keep this going, which I think that's the problem that the main boys show happens, which is the status quo never really changes at the end of each season, right? Like every season of the boys kind of ends with blackmail. Yeah, you're not going to talk about this, otherwise we're going to release this. And then everybody ends up back where they started. Homelander's still a powerful superhero, blah, 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 blah. The boys are still out in the streets, which after 4 seasons, I felt like that formula getting stale, which is why for the boys, I think they need to wrap it up this next season or so. So if they can avoid that, I want more. But if they're not going to seriously consider killing off major characters, writing people permanently out the show, things that the show has struggled with, then I don't want more of this.
Fair enough. All right, friends, tell us what you think. Hit us up on socials on Instagram at confidently_pod. Gen V, did you like it? Did you not? What are they doing well? What have you been intrigued by? Let us know in the comments on the post. Friends, see you later. Bye.